Hi, I'm back. Don't get too excited. Um, I'm gonna do a quick TV musing to kind of plug a hole in the gaping maw of zero videos here lately. Um, I've got others in the works and various stages of research and completion of notes and things. Uh, so anyway, in the interim, I'm gonna do one about a TV show, and it's one that probably can predict, knowing me, that I would want to cover. Originally, wasn't going to cover it, but what the hell? It's not over yet, but it's a 6 episode miniseries on Disney Plus called "The Falcon and the Winter Soldier." Um, so there's all kinds of this fan bro buzz on the internet about it. Is it any good? And who's going to appear? And is it better than WandaVision or worse? And just a lot of kind of stupid things that annoyed me last time with WandaVision. But I've pretty much been shutting them out because they haven't been as audacious. Like hey, Reed Richards is going to appear in the next episode, okay? And you know this how. Um, but anyway, uh, I wanted to say that I've been a fan of the character of the Falcon, Sam Wilson, since I was a wee tot back when him and Captain America shared billing on their comics as Captain America and the Falcon. Um, and of course, back then I knew Bucky as his long dead teenage partner, a character they were seemingly never going to resurrect. But there was a really good run of Captain America in the 2000s by Ed Brubaker, written by Ed Brubaker, and illustrated by Steve Epting, who used to live right here in Charlotte, North Carolina, back when he did Avengers. His work kind of was at a whole new level, though, when he did Cap. Really, a lot of realism, a lot of great lighting and light and shadow and dynamic compositions. He just drew Cap incredibly. So they brought Bucky back as the Winter Soldier, and so popular and I guess so fresh in people's minds that they went ahead and adapted it straight away into the second movie, right off the heels of the first one, set in World War II. If you remember, in the first movie, it's different than the comic books. Steve is more like Bucky's tag along friend than vice versa, and they're closer in age. Uh, Bucky takes up for Steve when he's bullied because he weighs like 90 pounds. He's extremely emaciated before he gets the super soldier formula. Um, Instead of a plane blowing up with Baron Zemo, it all gets kind of rearranged, and the films, he gets blasted off of a train or something. But anyway, he loses his arm just like in the comics, and then like in the comics, it's rebuilt with a cybernetic arm. In the films, it's explicitly vibranium, just like Cap's shield is made of. Um, Winter Soldier is a great film. The Captain America trilogy is a whole nother, bag to talk about on its own. I think as a series, uh, 3 complete films, and that's it about this character. Um, it's really the best stuff Marvel's done, Marvel Studios, in my opinion. Avengers has been uneven. All the series have been uneven to me, except for Captain America. All 3 have been really right on, well written, well shot, beautifully conceived, and really stunningly acted, especially by Chris Evans, who really kind of embodies that, democratic socialist, far leftist Captain America, the ideal over the government kind of American guy that I grew up with. So, um, the series now is kind of the fallout of a world without Captain America. So, and it's a fallout from Avengers Endgame in that sense, but also from Endgame in the sense of it's showing us more of what's happened to planet Earth in the 5 years where they had the blip or the snap, and half of humanity will have all living creatures disappeared, and then they come back 5 years later. So in Spider-Man, we saw basically Spider-Man Far From Home. We saw a bunch of teenage characters who had all been snapped away. So 5 years later, they're snapped in, and they're resuming school, and they're teenagers still, while the world's kind of moved on. But they didn't really do a lot with that concept, admittedly. But that was the the premise, because the Spider-Man films are never going to really be uh, a hardcore Marvel Universe kind of um decisive films, because Sony kind of half owns the movie rights. Um, I mean, Spider-Man can do important things in MCU films, but there's not really going to be any earth-shattering MCU events in Spider-Man films. Even though they do have like the Nick Fury and the Skrulls kind of teaser in it, which is a follow-up from Captain Marvel, and which is in turn kind of followed up at the end of WandaVision, because they're building up to the Skrull Secret Invasion miniseries, which I guess is going to star Nick Fury and a bunch of Skrulls. So that's cool. I like Skrulls. So I think they were very well done in Captain Marvel. Ben Mendelsohn was an amusing Skrull, and I like the idea of the Skrulls as refugees. Um, they really weren't the bad guys. They used shape shifting chameleon like powers to survive, to blend in with their environment like a chameleon does. Pretty brilliant, really, because in the comic book, Steve Englehart had decided to pitch things that way too, back in the 70s. That in his take, in the Avengers, the Skrulls were these kind of wise, spacefaring, super advanced creatures, and they came upon this savage world of savage white men, and that was the Kree. And the Kree, it's pretty long and involved. It's a great story. Essentially, the Kree started the Kree Skrull War. They shed the first blood, and then the war went on so long that the Kree finally evolved out of the Stone Age thing into the advanced technology. So a long, long time this war has been going on. We're probably hundreds of thousands of years, maybe at least tens of thousands of years. And so yeah, but by the time we're in the present day, the Kree, there's bad Kree, there's good Kree, there's mostly bad Skrulls, but there's a few good Skrulls occasionally. Um, but I like the way they recast it for Captain Marvel and for the Marvel Universe. I love it. The Kree are pretty unlikable. They always really were unlikable, that was the key to the Captain Marvel character, was that he was a good guy who was a Kree, excuse me, and he rebelled against his own people and their empire to fight on behalf of Earth. It's that noble kind of thing, a very kind of, I guess, a kind of a Stan Lee classic Marvel Universe kind of thing, that kind of Thor like nobility. But Marvel always had that, and so he was really the appropriate guy to be the first to take on Thanos and uh, go into the cosmic adventures and whatever by Jim Starlin. So let's backtrack a bit. So this series, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it's directed by the same guy who directed Vision, Scarlet Witch, and he created both shows for television. I think his name is Mark Spellman, but I might be wrong. I'm probably getting it mixed up. Sorry if I am. So we're picking up the pieces, and the big question is there going to be another Captain America? Because an aged Steve left the shield with Sam at the end of Endgame. Um, so I personally never liked Captain Falcon as Captain America in the comics at all. Falcon is the Falcon. You don't need a winged Captain America just so you can carry on. There are already numerous iterations of Captain America in the comics over the years. They didn't need Sam to be the newest heir when they killed off Steve. Of course, he came back and he was better. But it's a recent comic series. It was popular. Most of them written by that horrible writer Nick Spencer. Um, But so they're gonna put it in there. That's to appease the youngins, the younger Marvel fans. It's not classic Falcon material though. Falcon never had aspirations to be Captain America in the old days at all. Nor did Steve want him to be Captain America. I mean, uh, it wasn't an issue of Steve finding a successor. It was usually an issue of Steve being replaced by John Walker and having to become known as the captain. And much earlier, Steve giving up the mantle because he turned his back on the U.S. government because of Richard Nixon's suicide. Take my word for it, it's what happened. And he became known as the Nomad, and this kid named Roscoe started hanging out with the Falcon, and he put on the Captain America costume, and the Red Skull like whipped him to death. So the lesson, don't play at being Captain America. In the John Walker story, he's kind of an asshole who eventually, gave the mantle back to Steve, and he became, well, he took the captain's costume, black with the stripes across the front, and became known as the U.S. agent. So there are elements of that story in this series too. There's elements of all these different things I'm talking about, and they're woven together really nicely. So let's just get to it. Basically, Sam, not really, I guess, knowing what else to do, he gives the shield to like the Smithsonian Institute or whatever, where they have like all the Captain America memorabilia, like you saw uh, in Winter Soldier, where Cap rips off his own vintage costume to have a costume to wear. But and so that's that, And the first episode, I think it's called New World Order. Um, it's they're hour episodes. They're full action drama length shows, not like the Vision Scarlet Witch half hour shows, which are riff on the fact they were riffing on sitcoms, which are generally a half hour. Um, so the first episode to me was kind of slow, and that's okay. I mean, it's character development, and then some of it was really good, and some of it I didn't care for that much. The main element I didn't care for was that they kind of have done with Sam now what they did with Hawkeye, which is rather than really try to flesh out the real background of these characters from the comics as they have with most of the other characters, they just kind of created whole cloth a new background, like a new family, new names, new relationships, new scenarios, new background. Um, Hawkeye in the films is very different than Hawkeye in the comic books. I mean, occasionally their temperament is the same in some of the later movies. Jeremy Renner kind of plays that temperament well. But Hawkeye was never an assassin and never worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. He was in love with Black Widow, who was an assassin who worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. She defected, from the Soviet Union. That's how long ago these comics were made. But the Falcon, his background was like he grew up in Harlem, I think, and I think he had like a religious family, and so they retconned it a few times. But what they ended up with was he kind of was a decent guy, but then he got bitter. I don't know if it's the death of his parents or something. So he became kind of a drug pusher named Snap Wilson. And so he was kind of a reprobate when the Red Skull just kind of plucked him almost at random with the Cosmic Cube and made him this noble guy, the Falcon. Now, when that was first learned, it was really a shock, not only to Captain America, but the Falcon himself and to all the readers. So J.M. DeMatteis went back and said, no, he had been a decent guy. He snapped, and hence his name, Snap Wilson. And Snap Wilson had a nephew, Jim Wilson, who was a buddy of the Hulk. So these elements are mostly thrown out or completely reworked in episode 1 of Falcon and Winter Soldier. They've kept with his military background or whatever. I didn't really have a problem with that. It was kind of cool that he was counseling war veterans with trauma. It was fine that he got his wings through these military whatever black ops technology or however he got it. Whereas in the comic books, he didn't really have wings. He was just fighting. And he had a bird called Red Wing, a falcon. Later, he did get the wings and the red and white full-blown costume, but T'Challa, the Black Panther, created it for him. So, Falcon's introduced way, a bit before T'Challa, so, they're not going to follow it to the letter. So I had no problem with that. So he has a sister named Sarah. She's got two sons. I don't think either of them are named Jim. And they have some kind of like fish farm. I don't know, like some family business, like a fish market, and uh, they're poor. And Falcon is trying to help, and he's trying to use his clout because he's like a world famous hero. He fought, he fought fought Thanos off, with help of hundreds of other characters. But the fact is, I mean, he got pardoned from being like a criminal, which asshole General Ross made him in Civil War. But so he's like a really respected guy, and since he's not really super powered himself, I think he's a relatable guy. Probably the public sees him as kind of one of them who kind of like did right. And it's cool that he does come from a poor black background, a working class, and I liked that. Just the whole kind of laborious news story. I was tedious. Uh, Meanwhile, Bucky's having therapy because he's recovering from his decades of programming by Hydra. And his therapist, she's kind of an unpleasant individual, and there's some attempts at humor which I thought kind of fell flat. There's predictable. Um, Despite all this, I saw a lot of potential because I saw this plot rising up with this group called the Flag Smasher. And I think Flag Smasher or the Flag Smashers were also 80s Captain America villains or characters like John Walker, the U.S. agent, was. So a lot of stuff from the Mark Gruenwald run. He did a very long run throughout most of the 80s on Captain America. He's alas no longer with us. So Bucky's goes kind of against his I don't want to say his parole exactly. I mean, he's been pardoned, but he's not pardoned like Steve and Sam were. I mean, he's still like he's on parole basically. I mean, he was like Hydra assassin number one, and he killed a lot of people, even though he was programmed. So the U.S. government kind of tolerates him, and again he fought against Thanos and in the big war in Endgame, so they cut him some slack. Um, so he's kind of a lost, drifting guy, though. I mean, he doesn't really fit into the 21st century. He grew up in the 30s and 1930s, and now we're in the 2020s. He plays it close to the vest, Sebastian Stan, because it is kind of a character that's always been kind of reserved, subdued, because they kind of live in their own head because they're constantly like they're programmed. They're not expressing things. They're like he's like a killing machine. So as the series goes, Stan really does a great job bringing the layers out, and of course Anthony Mackie's always fantastic as the Falcon. I mean, he's the star of the show, no doubt, and he's the guy who's kind of got the heroic, that nobility that's going forward. He's trying to do the right thing, and he's trying to use his clout to help people, and it kind of keeps backfiring on him, or people don't accept his help, or well, bless his heart, he's trying, and I don't mean that the Southern way, like dismissive way. I mean, he's a good guy. So the Flag Smashers was a promising angle in the first episode with this character named Carly Morgenthau, who I don't think is from the comics, but I haven't researched enough. But she's played by a really beautiful actress who is obviously very racially mixed. She has a British accent. She has some African American features, but her skin is like almost albino white, and she's got like orangish freckles all over, and then very long, curly orangish red hair. Very striking. I'm a sucker for African American women with British accents. I always thought that was sexy. Like Naomi Harris, and I can name a bunch of others. Uh, but anyway, she's the leader of this group of the Flag Smashers, and what they are is they've got a hold of new iterations of the super soldier formula and been injected with them and have some extras on hand. So they're creating like a mini army, and basically they consider themselves revolutionaries and freedom fighters. They're trying to make the world, as I understand it, because this can get kind of convoluted. Basically, there's an organization, the World Patriation, Repatriation, something or other. I guess it's kind of the UN, except basically it's getting Earth governments back in order, back in line, after the 5 years of mass chaos. And, in episode 4, they describe how when the snap happened, everybody was clinging to each other because people were so spread out and far apart and lost family members and loved ones. So they were coming together as one people, but then the governments, when all the people came back, the governments jumped in and clamped down. So, they don't exactly explain how the political situation is in America exactly, but it seems like it's maybe a little more repressive or conservative, maybe than it was um, uh, in the lead up to the Avengers Infinity War. And it might even be as conservative as we are now. It's hard to tell. But um, again, all this stuff about protocols and soldiers and cops and everything and the government, that there's all this kind of brewing subtext in it, which I like about it, because, and like Steve Rogers' character, you can tell Sam Wilson is going to have that idea of, what's right, it's morally right, and saves lives and improves the quality of life for humans and I guess other animals too, supersedes the protocols of the military and law enforcement and the governments of Earth. That's not a popular view. I mean, like I said, he did go on the run with Cap with that view for 2 years already. So he's kind of walking that line. He sort of fits in and he sort of doesn't fit in. And Bucky, of course, doesn't fit in with anybody. He's like kind of in his shell. And him and Sam have this sparring, buddy thing. I mean, they're kind of going for the buddy cop show kind of mentality, but it's kind of funny at times. Sometimes it tries to be funny and it isn't funny. Uh, but the timing's usually dead on. The comedy stuff is subdued. I mean, as the series goes on, there's less of it and it's sharper. At least by episode 4. So I'm 2/3 through the series. So essentially, Falcon decides, he's going to stop these flag smashers, these errant super soldiers who want to bring back a one world peaceful government and topple these imperialistic forces that re-seized Earth. And who can really blame them? I mean, the American empire in our world is in severe decline. Maybe imperialism needs to conquer. I mean, conquer. Prevail, maybe is the right word. I mean, I'm sorry. Imperialism needs to fall, not conquer, not prevail. It needs to end. It's a dying way of life, a dying paradigm. So, in that context, a character like Carly is really appropriate for the times. And they even go into, how now they have super soldiers who are kind of doing what Captain America tried to do with the world. He was in a world at war, and now Carly, but he was like a blonde, blue-eyed American. Now Carly, who is a citizen of the world and multi-ethnic, she represents humanity as it is now, diversity of the human race. And her struggle is a world, not a war per se, but a world that is coming under complete control of the governments. Because I assume the governments must have like overreacted once all the people came back. So you don't have like a 1984 kind of situation blatantly, but I like what they're hinting at. They're hinting at the United States government isn't the answer, the military isn't the answer. Those are things they had already covered with Cap and Civil War and Winter Soldier, and then they bring that out with other characters who have philosophical kind of angles to add to this. One is our buddy from Civil War, Baron Zemo, played by Daniel Cruel, and I didn't care for him in the movie. I mean, I get he was a plot device, he served that well, but Cruel got on my nerves. He got on my nerves in a few things he's done. His acting has improved over the years. His accent isn't quite so mush mouth, kind of. I know he's a super popular actor now. Uh, but anyway, that between that improvement in him, I think, um, and also um, the improvement in the character in the sense of he's like an anti-villain. Someone online called him. I mean, he definitely murdered some people, including T'Chaka and a bunch of other people. And he was a soldier. He was a mercenary. He wasn't really a nice guy, but he did have a family, and they were like crushed in Sokovia. And he blamed the Avengers. But it's hard to feel sorry for him to me because he was such an asshole. Um, and the acting, I just didn't think he pulled it off. Um, So in the show, they're not trying to go for either of those angles. They're not trying to milk your sympathy for him for losing his family, nor are they trying to have you invest in him as this master villain. But he's more of a sly, calculating, cautious villain. Um, they feel like they need him based on his knowledge of Hydra to try to track down leads on the Flag Smashers and this renewed super soldier thing. And of course, he doesn't want super soldiers. He's against enhanced individuals and superheroes, obviously because of his bad experience with the Avengers, accidentally killing his family. Um, so he still has an element in him, but he's more laid back and clear-headed and philosophical about it. But he's had a couple. Well, got a couple. I don't know if he went out with the blip or not, but I guess he's had like 7 years in jail. Otherwise, ruminate on this. Basically, they ally themselves with him, and of course, this raises some eyebrows. Contentious things start to happen, which brings us to our last little cluster of major characters. The aforementioned John Walker from the comic books. In the comic books, he was like a knee-jerk, right-wing Reagan era asshole, and in the show, they try to make him a little more sympathetic. He's always trying to do the right thing, and they got all these medals of honor, and obviously he killed a bunch of people to get them, and feels weird about it. But they elect him to be the new Captain America. He doesn't have a serum, but he's going to be the symbol, and they give him the shield. And so right away, Bucky is angry at Sam for giving the shield away to the Smithsonian, who, through the government, gifted John Walker with the shield. He has a sidekick named Battlestar, character right out of the comics, same era, black guy who's kind of muscular, who is in the army with him. They don't treat the characters as one-dimensional, militarists. But as the show goes on, you do see that John is a bit unhinged. He doesn't seem at first. He seems like a little insecure growing into his role, and then also a little over cocky at times, trying to find his footing as Captain America. By the fourth episode, he's getting his ass kicked right and left by the new super soldiers. And then the Dora Milaje from Wakanda, from the Black Panther movies, they come to get Zemo because he's an enemy of their state since they killed King T'Chaka. He killed King T'Chaka, and Captain America gets embroiled in the middle of that. And he's just disrespected everywhere. He doesn't like the fact Falcon and Bucky know what they're doing, and him and Battlestar really don't. So there's this jealousy and this seething thing, and they haven't blatantly said this, but I think by the end of episode 4, it's, to me anyway, kind of obvious is that he's his brain, he's suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome. Yes, he's more right-wing than Sam and Steve, but it's not just that, it's that he's kind of brain-addled from being a soldier and being under that kind of stress. So in that sense, they make him a more relatable character, like a real person, too. I was afraid they were going to make him, like, too nice or drag things out and make him overly sympathetic, which was something I did not like about Daredevil Season 3 with Bullseye. Bullseye, to me, was always a cut-and-dried psychopath. That's kind of what he is. And they kind of went into this whole thing of how he became that way, and bits of it were from the comic, but a lot of it was made up wholesale. And I thought, why do they keep trying to make Bullseye sympathetic? I'm never going to sympathize with Bullseye. Um, and finally, he kind of gets out of control by the end, but John Walker goes out of control a lot quicker. So they avoided that pitfall. They didn't shine the light on him. He's very much the supporting character. He's not the star of the show. He's not even as much on camera or important to the machinations of the plot as Baron Zemo. And he's not as cool a character as Baron Zemo. Speaking of Baron Zemo, we found out that yes, he was a mercenary in Sokovia, but he was also wealthy, and he was a baron, even though that's like meaningless nowadays. But he had a castle, and he starts dressing in clothing more like his comic book counterpart, Helmut Zemo, with the big furry collar, long duster, and the purple shirt. And he has even the purple mask with the eyelets. And it looks cool as hell. He seems to put it on at weird times, not a whole lot, but it's a great touch. He looks and acts. Helmut Zemo was a little more of an anti-hero than his father, the Nazi Heinrich Zemo, who was the guy who blew up Captain Hook in the comics. So they made the Helmut Zemo of the movies a lot more like the Helmut Zemo of the comics, except the mask isn't stuck to his face. Yet, I don't know if they're going to do that or not. That would be pretty awful, really, horrifying. I guess he'd go totally mad then, but anyway, who knows what's going to happen. I'm not going to speculate like everybody else online does, but so I'm really enjoying the interplay between Sam and young Bucky, and well, he's not young anymore, 100-year-old Bucky, and Zemo. Acting's top notch, and they also reintroduce another character and actress that I love. I guess the most major female character so far, which is Sharon Carter. Again, a character I grew up with in the comics. I thought they adapted her into an Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. beautifully. There was a mystery around her in Winter Soldier, just like in the comics when she was Agent 13. Cap didn't even know her name, but he kept bumping into her, fighting AIM and all these bad guys. And of course, they fell in love. And he finally learns her name is Sharon Carter, and he's like, whoa, she's the little sister Peggy Carter, my love from the war. And of course, the sliding time scale that Marvel used this to set their story slid so far it went off a fucking cliff. So Peggy had to be retconned into being Sharon's older aunt, like her father's older sister. And that's what they went with for the movie. And that's fine. But anyway, Emily Vandenkamp, I think is her name. She used to star in the show called Revenge, which I thought was really hokey. And I didn't really like her character. She was kind of like a typical, and maybe it was a parody in a way of 80s primetime soap operas. She was kind of like a blonde, pretty slim woman who was like kind of morally ambiguous and but glamorous and wealthy. She's nothing like that in the Marvel stuff. Sharon Carter is a very grounded character. She's very tough, and basically we find out that she's been an enemy of the state and was not pardoned for giving Sam the wings and Steve the shield for the end of Civil War. And because they barely, I don't even think mentioned her. So she's kind of bitter and angry being left behind, and that's kind of cool. I mean, they basically used the storytelling oversight of theirs, not mentioning her or using her, as part of the plot, making it like an oversight that, whoops, we forgot about Sharon. And so her and Sam have this, still respect for each other, but he's trying to make up for it. He wants to pull strings and get her pardoned. Again, he's trying to help everybody. Just a good guy. Sharon, in her time away, she's had refuge in a city called Madripoor. So this is from the comics too, and this is the second, I guess, official crossover, ostensibly with Wolverine. Who knows when Wolverine's ever going to make it into the MCU and who's going to play him? But at the end of Daredevil season 3, we was mentioned the Japanese scientist who fused the metal together, and I guess adamantium. Well, they didn't say adamantium, but they hinted. They didn't say adamantium. Couldn't use it yet. But anyway, that character was part of the process of creating Weapon X Wolverine, giving Logan the adamantium. And then later, after Daredevil dropped Bullseye off the top of a roof and broke every bone in his body, which he also did in the Ben Affleck movie. In the series, he got his back and bones broken by Kingpin. And at the end, they're talking about rebuilding him. In the comics, they did do that. They rebuilt him not even a year after he'd been crippled, and they used that process. So he had steel skeleton from then on. I don't know if it was pure adamantium or not, but anyway, that was a sideways crossover with Wolverine. So Madripoor is the second sideways kind of crossover with Wolverine, because that's a place that Wolverine has spent a lot of time on and off over the last century in the comics, because of course he's unnaturally long-lived as part of his mutant powers. There are little hints. There's like the Princess Bar. There's some of the buildings that look kind of like Madripoor in the Chris Claremont, John Buscema Wolverine series, which was, to me, really good and really the coolest look Wolverine had up to that time. No mask and all black outfit. And kind of a pattern for how we see him as in the Hugh Jackman stuff. So they don't really mention any characters by name, but like I said, the locations and the reputation and the exotic locale and the fact it's probably been around a long time, like a modern Casablanca or something, and it was, when Claremont made it up, it was, riff on that, and like Terry and the Pirates and these exotic places people went, in mid 20th century adventure fiction. And of course, Wolverine lived that long, so he actually did have adventures in that milieu during that time period. So while her time in Madripoor, she's improved her fighting skills even more. She's incredibly formidable. She kicks a whole bunch of guys' ass, single-handedly. And she's pretty angry. She's just kind of cynical now. She's not quite as sweet as she was, but it's great. I mean, I love the way they did her. I don't mean the way they treated Sharon. I mean the way they portrayed Sharon. In Madripoor, there's this mysterious character called the Power Broker. That is also a character from the comic books. And I'll be real honest, just because I've been lazy and haven't done my research, I can't remember who he was revealed to be in the comic books, so I don't know if that's who he's going to be revealed to be in the show or not. I assume they'll reveal who he is by episode 6. I don't know. But basically, the Power Broker has been working with as I get it, he was instrumental in getting this new super soldier formula developed and these people gaining these powers. Because in the comics, the Power Broker, that's what he does. He hooks people up with the technology or whatever to give people superpowers. And I think in the comics, he was sometimes maybe allied with or similarly intentioned as the character Dr. Carl Malice, who did a similar thing. He wasn't a prime mover character. He was a scientist from the Moon Knight comics, but he appeared in, I believe it's Jessica Jones season 3. I think that's correct. Or 2, or maybe it's season 2, with her mother. So they've adapted him already, but I don't think he's going to be the Power Broker. So I know I'm not doing this in any order, but I am hitting all the major things. Don't worry. I mean, this is a lot better than my old boy video, which I thought turned out pretty bad. So I shouldn't tell people that, then they won't want to see it. But I mean, you might think it's great if you do tell me, but I wasn't happy with that. It turned out it was too long and rambling and mistake riddled. And I love that movie too much to have it deserve that fate. So this show is fresh in my mind, and of course I know a lot about the source material, and I've seen all the MCU movies, every single one. So I'm in a good position to talk about it, and I'm not always in a good position to talk about some of the things that I talk about, but I give it a shot anyway. I wing it, like Sam. Kidding. And so anyway, Sam's not the Falcon yet. Sam's the Falcon. Sam the Falcon is not Captain America yet, at least as of episode 4. But what's happened is John Walker, in his jealousy and insecurity and weirdness, essentially they're trying to grab from Carly and her Confederates the new final samples of the super soldier formula that they're going to use to make more of them. I think there's 5 or 6 vials of it. And Zemo, man, he starts stomping on them, man. He's pretty damn spiteful too, man. but one eludes his grab. Well, he's knocked out, and then one eludes him, and John Walker kind of tucks it away. And the more the episode what goes on with, even the Wakandans, the Dora Milaje beating his ass, he's really kind of having a meltdown. And then finally, because he's like, they're not even super soldiers, and they beat my ass, you know. Um, and then, you know, one of the super soldiers kills Battlestar, who was his good buddy. I kind of saw that coming. I kind of thought they were going to make him the sacrificial character, but then I was like, no, they don't do that anymore, where they kill off the black guy first, you know. But I don't know. Maybe it just doesn't matter that he's black, but he's John Walker's partner, so he's like his Bucky. So now he's got his Bucky's death on his conscience, the way Captain America had the real Bucky. And so he sneaks, and they don't show it, but he sneaks, and I don't know how he administers this blue serum, the super soldier formula to derivate. I don't know if he shoots it up, or he snorts it, like cracks it and snorts it like nitrate up his nose, or if he drinks it. You know, it's very ambiguous because of the shape of the vial, and I don't know. So he comes out and starts kicking ass. And he kicks a little too much ass. And he kills one of the super soldiers, and it's pretty bloody. And the show ends with blood on his shield, and it's a great shot. You know, so it's really, I mean, it's a heavy-handed symbol or metaphor, but I think it's well done visually. And so John Walker finally kind of has become the psycho he was in the comic books. You know, this covetousness of his personality in the comics has started to take over him, I think, due to his PTSD and his insecurities about filling the ranks of Cap, especially not having the super soldier formula, which even Bucky was given a super soldier formula. You know, it's one reason that he's so strong and tough and is able to retard his aging even in between the long periods of suspended animation. Much like Cap, when we finally saw Steve at the end of Endgame, biologically, if you add through all the time travel and blah, 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 he was about 120 years old, but he looked like a pretty, you know, decent a guy in decent health of about 80. So, you know, Bucky's pretty firm and fit, you know, because the serum. I wanted to go into one other thing because that's how episode 4 ends. So it's a heck of a cliffhanger. Um, I've praised the Carly character, and you do get her more sympathy towards her in this episode, even though she does threaten Sam's family. But yeah, I think she's bluffing. But she likes Sam. She respects him. She does not like Captain America, and her plan really is when Captain America pops up, John Walker, she's going to murder him as a statement. And therefore, the passing of the torch, the shield is no longer the symbol. I don't know what her symbol is going to be. They have a long talk about it, her and her guys in the episode. It's really cool and well written. But they killed Battlestar instead, and even she's a little bit like, oh fuck, we kind of fucked up, and runs away, and you know, just in time because you know Walker's out of control. But anyway, speaking of the super soldier formula, what we know so far in the MCU is that you know Cap had it. It's different than the chronology of the Weapon Plus program in the comics, where I believe Captain America was like Weapon 5, and of course Wolverine was Weapon 10, Weapon X. And then along the way, you had some failures in between, like Ted Sallis, who became the Man Thing. I'm wondering if they're going to go ahead and put Ted Sallis in this show and have him with a super soldier formula. That would seem to be the natural way to bring Man Thing in, because there's all these whispers about Man Thing coming in because of the Nexus and WandaVision supposedly being the Nexus of all realities. I talked about all this in the WandaVision video way too much. But it did make my Savage Tales #1 go way up in price. And I just sold it for a lot of money. Happy. Not as much as I wanted, but still. So that makes me happy. Some good news for once. So anyway, yeah, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there was Cap, and then there was Bucky. Somehow, I guess they bootlegged the serum the Soviets did. I'm not sure how they covered that or how much detail they covered that in Winter Soldier. As many times as I've watched it, I should know that by now. But But in the early 50s, the America started testing it on black people. And that was in the comics. That's been canonical in the comics since the 90s when they made the series called Truth. And the subtitle was Red, White, and Black. And it's this character, Isaiah Bradley. And he was Weapon One, essentially. Either Weapon Zero or Weapon One, essentially. And he was the first Captain America. He had a shield, not like a super, unbreakable shield, but a shield just like the one Captain America originally used in World War II, when he debuted. And so the story, his backstory in the MCU is that they dropped him behind enemy lines, and he took on the Winter Soldier, and he kicked his ass by his own reckoning. So he's in the show, and he's played by Carl Lumley, great actor, has been in tons of stuff. He's even starred in a superhero series called Mantis about 30 years ago, married to the wonderful Bonetta McGee, who unfortunately is no longer with us. Lumley also was a really good recast for Scatman Crothers in Doctor Sleep, the sequel to The Shining, a movie that The Shining is a great movie, but Doctor Sleep really is a great modern horror movie. It really kind of shocked me how much I liked it. Because I'm not a big Stephen King or Ewan McGregor fan, but now three iconic black actors have played, O'Halloran, Scatman Crothers, Melvin Van Peebles, and Carl Lumley. So they always get him right. I need to see Doctor Sleep again. I really dug it. Anyway, he's Isaiah. And Bucky takes it for Sam to go see him, and Sam's just like, "You never told me about this guy. You never told me there was a black super soldier that you fought in the 50s. What the hell?" And he's pretty bitter. He's old, but again, like Steve's aging. Think about it: the early 50s, and now it's 2020. He would be very old if he didn't have the formula. He would be dead or infirm, incredibly infirm. But he's like an old guy. He's like maybe 65, 70 looking, which might be the age Carl Lumley is. I'm not sure. And yeah, and he also knocks something aside and it hits into the wall, with pinpoint accuracy, like a little metal thing. So he's still got the reflexes too. I really hope they use him some more. That was brilliant. When that happened, I was like, wow, they're really on the right track. Bringing in Isaiah Bradley, bringing in John Walker, improving Zemo, bringing back Sharon, the Flag Smashers. Really, this series it doesn't have Captain America that we know the best, Steve Rogers, but it has all of this stuff of the Captain America mythos from the comic books from over 80 years of mythology. This started with Jack Kirby and went through Steve Englehart and Martin Gruenwald and all these great writers and artists. And I grew up with a lot of it. And I got to say, they're doing a fantastic job. I'm very impressed. I'm very happy with the show. Episode one, just needed to kind of build and simmer. It didn't have to be all flashy or whatever. But now that it's kind of found its footing, with episode two, it really did. It really started taking off. And in episode two, they did the famous or infamous scene they've shown in tons of the trailers of them having like buddy group counseling with that woman, that obnoxious psychiatrist. And it's played mostly for laughs. Yeah. But the good thing is, then they kind of tell her to take a hike. She's another authoritarian figure. She doesn't want Bucky to go on the mission with Sam. But Sam's like, I need him. And of course, nobody wants, Zemo to go, but Sam's like, I need him. So Sam gets what he wants, it's just, and he tries to be nice about it. And when people kind of fuck with him, then he just, does it because it's like, he's got to get it done, man. He's got to stop these super soldiers from changing the world government. So that's their plan, I guess. I don't see how they could do it with like Thor and Captain Marvel and Hulk walking first, but that's a whole nother all wax. I guess they'll figure that out when or if they ever get to it, but I doubt they'll get to it. But I do like this character, Carly. She's a really cool actress, really beautiful, really great acting, and compelling character. At first, I thought, well, they're making up this character for the show, and they're adding in all this other stuff, but actually they've tied it all together. All these little cross currents with like they go to the Baltic region and with Sokovia and discussion of Sokovia. and going to Madripoor. It's kind of a globe hopping kind of adventure. Yeah, I'm down with it. So I'm going to sign off here in a minute because this turned out really long. Playing some music that I'm probably going to cover on my show soon. Um, but I hope it wasn't loud enough to obscure uh, my sound. I've been kind of messing the sound up a few times by not being close enough to some of these mics to pick it up, or by having something else going in the background. It kind of has one of those condenser mics where, it used to be on jam boxes and things to record tapes where, the loudest sound would occlude everything else. I mean, and then for like several seconds after that sound went off, everything else would kind of go, and you couldn't hear anything, and then it had to come back up. And I've noticed that's what's happening in my videos too. And it was kind of rough in the old boy one at times. And again, I apologize. One or two others, I had that problem. So hopefully I haven't messed this video up. But anyway, I'm trying to speak and enunciate louder and more clearly. And yeah, I should probably not be playing music at the same time I do. At least out of here, I can play it there. So thanks for listening. Hope you guys are enjoying Falcon and Winter Soldier. I am, and now I feel like I'm getting back on track with my videos. So I've got a huge bottomless well music project that is going to be several parts, and I've got it all researched and all lined up. But I need to take a lot more notes and do some more listening. So I'll roll that out sometime in the near future. The next episode is probably going to be just five more obscure older bands from some country. And that's kind of what I'm doing for a while until I get to this kind of special that I want to do. And but I don't want to say anything else about it. And as far as my Blu reviews, I don't feel really compelled to do any for a while, but you never know. A lot of this is just how I feel, the whim of the moment. That's what this was today, and I wanted to go with it. And I had a good hair day too, so I wanted to record it. And but like the special on Bottomless Well, it is a project I want to finish, and see through, kind of like I did all the Halloween movies at Halloween, and some of the series like the two Twin Peaks and stuff like that. I never finished the Star Trek series, so I don't know if I ever will. But you got 2 videos out of me, and I don't think I can get to 4. So anyway, take care, and I'll see all of you soon. And thanks a lot for watching. Rock on.